The lawyer's office smelled like leather and disappointment. I sat there, watching my sister Victoria count zeros on her inheritance check while I stared at the cardboard box in my lap. 23 years of being our mother's daughter, and all I got was a box of her old shoes. The patent leather pumps caught the light from the window, mocking me with their shine. Victoria's laugh cut through the silence like broken glass. "Well, Emma," she said, not even trying to hide her smirk, "I guess Mom knew which daughter actually mattered." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but he didn't say anything. Nobody ever did when Victoria decided to be cruel. I ran my finger along the edge of one particularly worn heel, feeling the crack in the leather. And that's when I felt it. Something that shouldn't be there. Something hidden. Something that would change absolutely everything. If you're watching this because you've ever felt invisible in your own family, like you were worth less than the dust on old shoes, then you need to hear what happened next, because sometimes the greatest treasures come disguised as worthless junk. Please stay with me. This story might just change how you see everything. My name is Emma Sinclair, though for most of my life I might as well have been called the other daughter. You know how some families have the golden child? Well, Victoria was ours. Platinum, diamond encrusted, limited edition. She was 3 years older, 3 inches taller, and about 3 million times more important in our mother's eyes. Or at least, that's what I believed until that day in the lawyer's office. Growing up in our house in Westchester was like living in a museum where I wasn't allowed to touch anything. Mom had inherited the estate from her parents. Old money, the kind that came with rules about which fork to use and how to laugh without showing too many teeth. Victoria mastered it all by age 10. Me? I was the one who spilled grape juice on the Persian rug during Mom's garden party when I was 7. She never let me forget it. "Emma just doesn't have the grace," Mom would tell her friends when she thought I wasn't listening. "Not like Victoria. Victoria understands what it means to be a Whitmore woman." Whitmore was Mom's maiden name, the one that came with the money and the expectations. Dad's name, Sinclair, was apparently just for signing checks and disappointment. Dad left when I was 12. One morning he was there, making pancakes in the kitchen and humming off-key to the radio. And by dinner, his closet was empty, and Mom was setting the table for 3 instead of 4. Victoria said it was because he couldn't handle being married to someone so far above his station. Mom said nothing, just removed his photos from the mantel like she was weeding a garden. I found them later in the trash. His smiling face covered in coffee grounds and eggshells. The thing about being the invisible daughter is that you see everything. I saw Mom slip pills into her wine glass when she thought no one was watching. I saw Victoria steal money from Mom's purse and blame the housekeeper. I saw the bills marked "Final Notice" that Mom hid under the silver tea tray. But most importantly, I saw Mom late at night, sitting in Dad's old study, talking to someone on the phone in hushed, urgent whispers. "She can never know," I heard her say once. "Emma can never know." I thought she meant about the financial troubles. Our fortune, it turned out, was more facade than fact. The house was mortgaged 3 times over. The cars were leased. The jewelry Victoria paraded around in, paste copies of pieces sold years ago. But Mom kept up appearances, and Victoria kept spending, and I kept quiet because that's what invisible daughters do. When I turned 18, I thought things might change. I'd gotten into Columbia on a full scholarship, academic, not legacy, thank you very much. Mom's response? Well, I suppose someone has to be the bookish one. Victoria had gone to Vassar on Mom's connections and Dad's guilt money, majoring in art history and minoring in spending her trust fund. But my acceptance letter might as well have been a grocery receipt for all the attention it got. College was my escape. 4 years of being Emma, not Victoria's sister or the other Whitmore girl. I made friends who didn't know about the estate or the expectations. I dated a guy named James who thought I was beautiful, even when I laughed too loud and showed all my teeth. I majored in environmental law, which Mom called aggressively middle class, but which made me feel like I could change something, fix something, matter to someone. But every holiday, every break, I went back home. Back to being the ghost in the family portrait. Victoria had moved back after college, claiming she was helping Mom manage the estate, but really just online shopping and day drinking with her equally vapid friends. She'd gotten engaged twice and broken it off both times when the men turned out to have less money than they'd implied. "I have standards," she'd say, examining her manicure. "Not all of us can date peasants like Emma does." James wasn't a peasant, he was a teacher, which in Victoria's world was apparently worse. When I brought him home for Thanksgiving my senior year, Victoria spent the entire dinner asking him about his little job and whether he found it fulfilling to work with other people's children, since you'll never be able to afford your own. Mom laughed, actually laughed. James and I broke up 2 weeks later. He said it wasn't about my family, but I knew better. Who would want to marry into that? After graduation, I got a job at an environmental nonprofit in the city. The pay was nothing, but the work meant something. I was helping communities fight against corporations, dumping waste in their water. Mom called it embarrassingly earnest. Victoria called it performative poverty. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. I found a studio apartment in Brooklyn, a 5th-floor walk-up with a radiator that clanged like a ghost in chains, and a view of a brick wall. It was mine, though, bought with my own money, decorated with furniture I found on street corners, and painted myself. Mom visited once, took one look at my mismatched dishes, and never came back. "It's so authentic," she said, the word dripping with disdain. Victoria, meanwhile, had started dating Wellington Ashford III, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune and owner of the most punchable face in the northeastern United States. He was 43 to her 28, with an ex-wife, 2 kids he never saw, and a cocaine habit he thought was a personality trait. But he had a yacht and a house in the Hamptons, so Mom approved. "Finally," she said, "someone worthy of the Whitmore name." The wedding was planned for next spring. Mom threw herself into it with the fervor of someone trying to outrun bankruptcy. 12-tier cake, orchids flown in from Thailand, a dress that cost more than I made in a year. The invitations were engraved with gold leaf. My name was spelled wrong on all 600 of them, Emily instead of Emma. When I pointed it out, Mom waved her hand dismissively. "No one will notice, dear." She was probably right. I was going to be shoved in a bridesmaid dress the color of old salmon and forgotten in the corner while Victoria played princess for a day. Just another Whitmore family production where I was an extra in my own life. Then Mom died. It was sudden. A heart attack at 58. She was at her Pilates class, of all places, probably worried about looking perfect even while dying. The instructor said she just gasped once, touched her chest, and collapsed onto her yoga mat. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was gone. Victoria called me at work, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "She's gone, Emma. Mom's gone. What am I going to do?" What she did was immediately start planning a funeral that would have made royal families jealous. Mom would be buried in the Whitmore family plot, in a casket that cost more than most people's cars, wearing the real diamonds we apparently still owned. The service was at St. Catherine's, where Mom had been pretending to be religious for the past 30 years. Wellington gave a eulogy about a woman of grace and distinction, even though he'd met her exactly 4 times. Victoria cried prettily into a lace handkerchief. I sat in the second row and felt nothing. That's not true. I felt relief. God, how awful is that? My mother was dead, and all I could think was that I'd never have to hear her tell me I was a disappointment again. I'd never have to watch her fawn over Victoria while looking through me like I was made of glass. I'd never have to pretend that it didn't hurt to be the daughter who wasn't quite good enough. The lawyers called 3 days after the funeral. Mom's will needed to be read. Victoria and I sat in that office that smelled like leather and old paper, waiting to hear how Mom had divided up the nothing we all knew she had left. Victoria kept talking about the house, the art, the jewelry she was sure Mom had hidden somewhere. "She wouldn't leave us with nothing," she kept saying. "We're Whitmores." The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, cleared his throat and began reading. The house, what was left after the debts were paid, went to Victoria. About $300,000 in various accounts, also to Victoria. The car, the remaining jewelry, the art, Victoria, Victoria, Victoria. With each item, my sister sat up straighter, her grief miraculously diminishing as her bank account grew. "To my daughter Emma," Mr. Peterson read, and I actually sat forward, some stupid part of me still hoping. I leave the contents of my personal closet, specifically the collection of shoes in the blue storage box. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Victoria laughed, not a pretty laugh, but something harsh and cruel. "Her shoes? She left you her old shoes?" She was practically crying with laughter. "Oh my God, Emma, that's perfect. That's so perfect. Even dead, Mom knew exactly what you were worth." Mr. Peterson looked uncomfortable as he produced the box. A faded blue cardboard thing that looked like it had been in storage since the 80s. It was taped shut with yellowing packing tape. I took it because what else was I going to do? Storm out? Cry? Make a scene like Victoria would have? No. I took my box of old shoes and I left. Victoria followed me to the parking lot, still laughing. "You know what the best part is?" she said, leaning against her BMW, also inherited naturally. "Mom told me years ago that she was leaving me everything important. She said you wouldn't understand what to do with real wealth anyway. But shoes? Dead woman's shoes? That's just cruel, even for her." I put the box in my beat-up Honda and drove away without saying anything. What was there to say? That it hurt? That even dead, our mother had found a way to remind me that I was the lesser daughter? That I'd secretly hoped maybe she'd left me something, anything, that showed she'd seen me as more than an afterthought? Back in my apartment, I sat on my thrift store couch and stared at the box. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened. What could be in there except another reminder of how little I'd mattered? But curiosity won, the way it always does. I cut through the tape with my kitchen scissors and opened the lid. The smell hit me first. Mom's perfume, Chanel No. 5, the scent that used to mean safety when I was very young, before I learned that her hugs came with conditions and her love had limits. Inside were shoes, maybe a dozen pairs, all carefully wrapped in tissue paper. They were old but well-maintained, pumps and heels from the 60s and 70s, from before Mom married Dad, from when she was young and maybe different. I pulled them out one by one, black patent leather pumps with a small bow, red heels with a tiny scuff on the left toe, navy blue shoes with pearl buttons. They were beautiful in an old-fashioned way, but they were just shoes. Old shoes. Dead woman's shoes, like Victoria had said. I was about to put them back when I noticed one pair at the bottom, wrapped more carefully than the others. They were cream-colored heels with gold buckles, clearly expensive even when they were new. The leather was soft, buttery almost, and barely worn. I turned one over to look at the sole and felt something shift inside the heel. It was loose. The heel was loose. I twisted it gently, and it came off in my hand. Inside, rolled up tight and held with a rubber band so old it crumbled when I touched it, was a piece of paper. No, not paper. Parchment. Legal parchment. My hands shook as I unrolled it. It was a deed. A property deed for something called the Whitmore Trust Land, dated 1962, before Mom was even born. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was the name on the deed. Emma Whitmore Sinclair. Me. The deed was in my name. But that was impossible. I wasn't born until 1999. How could a deed from 1962 have my name on it? I read it again, then again. Emma Whitmore Sinclair. There was a note paper clipped to the back in handwriting I didn't recognize. For the Emma who was meant to be. The Emma who was lost. The Emma who will understand what to do with what was taken. Your grandmother knew. Your mother knew. Now you know. The truth is buried at Willow Creek. Willow Creek. I knew that name. It was a property about 2 hours north of the city, some land my grandmother had owned, but that Mom had said was sold years ago to pay debts. But according to this deed, it wasn't sold. It was held in trust. For me. for an Emma who existed before I existed. I spent the rest of the night searching through the other shoes. In the right heel of the red pumps, I found a key, old and brass, with a number engraved on it, 1847. In the toe of the black pumps, wedged deep, was a photograph. It was old, black and white, showing a young woman who looked exactly like me. Not similar, exactly like me. Same nose, same chin, same eyes. On the back, in the same handwriting as the note, Emma Whitmore, 1962, my daughter. My loss. My shame. My grandmother had a daughter named Emma, a daughter who looked like me, a daughter who had been written out of history so completely that I'd never even heard of her. But why? What happened to her? And why did I have her name, her face, her inheritance? I called in sick to work the next day and drove to Willow Creek. I'd expected empty land, maybe some old foundation stones. What I found was a fully intact house, hidden behind overgrown trees and a gate that looked abandoned but opened smoothly with the brass key. The house was small but perfect, a Victorian cottage with gingerbread trim and windows that caught the morning light. It had been maintained. Someone had been taking care of it all these years. Inside, the furniture was covered in dust sheets, but underneath everything was pristine. There was a study full of books, a kitchen with copper pots still hanging from hooks, bedrooms with quilts folded at the feet of brass beds. It was like stepping into a time capsule, a life interrupted but not destroyed. In the main bedroom, I found them, the answers. Letters, hundreds of them, tied with ribbon and stored in a wooden chest. Letters between my grandmother and someone named Robert Chen. Love letters, passionate, desperate love letters, and photographs of them together, my grandmother glowing with happiness, her hand on her pregnant belly, standing next to a Chinese-American man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The story unfolded in those letters like a horrible fairy tale. My grandmother, heir to the Whitmore fortune, had fallen in love with the wrong man, wrong in her father's eyes, anyway. Robert was brilliant, a doctor, but he wasn't white, and in 1962, that was all that mattered to the Whitmore family. When she got pregnant, her father gave her a choice. Give up the baby and never see Robert again or lose everything, the money, the family, the name. She chose love. She chose Robert and their baby Emma. They ran away to Willow Creek, the one property she owned outright, bought with money her mother had left her. They were happy for 6 months. Then Robert died in a car accident that my grandmother always believed wasn't an accident. The baby, Emma, died 2 days later. Crib death, the death certificate said, but my grandmother's letters told a different story. They took her, she wrote to a friend. My father took her. He said she died, but I know. A mother knows. My Emma is alive somewhere, being raised by strangers, never knowing who she really is. My grandmother spent the rest of her life trying to find her daughter. She hired private investigators. She searched records. She never stopped looking. But the Whitmore money and influence had hidden the truth too well. She died never knowing what happened to her Emma. But she left clues. She left the house in trust for Emma Whitmore Sinclair, believing that someday, somehow, her daughter or her daughter's descendants would find their way back. She couldn't leave it to her directly. She didn't know what name she was living under. So she left it to the name she should have had, would have had, if the world had been different. My mother knew. In the chest, I found letters from my mother to my grandmother, dated just before I was born. I'm naming her Emma, my mother wrote. Like you asked. I don't understand why, but you said it was important. You said she would need to be Emma, that Emma would inherit what was stolen. My mother knew there was another Emma, and she named me after her. She knew about Willow Creek, and she kept it secret, maintained it, waiting. But why didn't she tell me? Why let me grow up thinking I was nothing, when I was literally named after my grandmother's lost daughter, her most precious love? The answer was in Mom's own letters, hidden in a false bottom of the chest. Letters to Victoria's father, not my father as it turned out. Mom had an affair. Victoria was the product of her marriage to Dad, but I was the product of a brief relationship with someone else, someone she never named. I can't tell them, she wrote. I can't tell anyone. David thinks Emma is his, and it has to stay that way. But sometimes I look at her and I see him, and I'm terrified. What if she figures it out? What if everyone figures it out? Victoria is the legitimate heir. Emma is my mistake, my secret, my shame. Just like the first Emma was my mother's shame. I was the echo of a tragedy, named after a ghost, carrying the face of a woman who was erased for loving the wrong person. My mother saw me as her shame, the proof of her infidelity, the daughter who shouldn't exist. No wonder she could never love me the way she loved Victoria. Victoria was the daughter she was supposed to have. I was the daughter who reminded her of her own failures, her own secrets, her own mother's loss. But there was more. In a manila envelope at the very bottom of the chest, I found the real shock. Recent documents, dated just a month before Mom died. She'd been investigating something, hiring lawyers, tracking down records. The papers were about Willow Creek, but not just the house, the land, all of it. 300 acres that were now, according to current assessments, worth approximately $47 million. Mom knew. She knew about the value, and she knew it was legally mine through the trust. She couldn't touch it. The trust was ironclad, written by my grandmother's lawyers to ensure no Whitmore could steal it from Emma. But she also couldn't bring herself to tell me. The last paper in the stack was a letter she'd started but never finished. Emma, I know you think I don't love you. The truth is more complicated. You remind me of everything I'm not supposed to be, everything our family isn't supposed to be. You have her face, the first Emma's face. My mother showed me pictures once, and the resemblance is uncanny. It's like she came back through you, and I've been so afraid of the truth coming out, afraid of Victoria finding out she's not my only daughter by David, afraid of you finding out that you're worth more than all of us combined. The land is yours. It was always yours. I should have told you, but I'm a coward. I've always been a coward. Maybe the shoes will help you understand. Maybe you'll forgive me. Maybe... The letter ended there, unfinished, unsigned, unsent. I sat in that dusty bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of 3 generations of secrets and lies, and I laughed. I laughed until I cried, and then I cried until I couldn't breathe. All those years of feeling worthless, and I was sitting on $47 million. All those years of being invisible, and I was the living reminder of a love story that threatened to destroy the Whitmore legacy. All those years of Victoria's cruelty, and she was about to marry a man she didn't love for money she didn't need to marry for, because I had more money than she could ever spend. The irony was delicious. The pain was unbearable. The truth was complicated. I spent 3 days at Willow Creek, going through everything, understanding the full scope of what my grandmother had left me. It wasn't just the land. There were investments, accounts in Switzerland, art stored in climate-controlled facilities in the city. My grandmother had been smart. She'd hidden wealth from her father, protected it, grew it, all for an Emma who might never exist, but who she never stopped believing in. And now it was mine, all of it. The girl who got a box of old shoes was actually the richest person in the family. The daughter who was worth nothing was worth everything. I hired a lawyer, not Mr. Peterson, but someone who specialized in trusts and estates. Ms. Rodriguez was sharp, thorough, and very interested in the story of the Whitmore family's lost fortune. "This is airtight," she said, reviewing the documents. "Your grandmother was brilliant. There's no way anyone can contest this. The land, the accounts, everything. It's yours. Has been since you were born, and your mother named you Emma." "What about Victoria?" I asked. "What about the family? What about them?" Ms. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "They got what your mother left them. You got what your grandmother left you. The fact that your grandmother was significantly better at hiding and growing wealth than your mother was at spending it? That's not your problem." She was right, of course. but I still felt guilty. Or maybe not guilty, maybe just sad. Sad that it had taken death and secrets and hidden deeds for me to understand my own worth. Sad that my mother had died thinking I'd never know the truth. Sad that Victoria was planning a wedding to a man she didn't love because she thought she needed his money. I decided to wait until after the wedding to reveal everything. Let Victoria have her day, her princess moment, her triumph. It would be the last one she'd have for a while. The wedding was everything Mom would have wanted, excessive, elegant, and empty of actual emotion. Victoria looked beautiful in her $40,000 dress, smiling like she'd won the lottery as she married Wellington in front of 500 of their closest acquaintances. I stood in my salmon-colored bridesmaid dress, holding her bouquet, watching her promise to love and cherish a man she'd called adequately wealthy just the night before. At the reception, I sat at the family table, listening to toast after toast about Victoria's beauty, grace, and good fortune. Wellington's mother, dripping in diamonds, made a speech about how pleased she was that her son had found someone from such good stock. Victoria's college friends giggled about how she'd always said she'd marry rich, and wasn't it wonderful that she'd actually done it? Then Wellington stood up, champagne glass in hand, and made the toast that changed everything. "To my beautiful wife," he said, swaying slightly. "Cocaine and champagne, a delightful combination. Who loved me even when she thought I was poor." The room laughed politely, but I saw Victoria's face freeze. "No, really," Wellington continued, clearly enjoying himself. "She didn't know about the trust fund when we met. She thought I was just another middle manager at Daddy's company. Didn't you, sweetheart? You said yes to the proposal before you Googled my net worth. That's true love." The room was silent. Victoria's smile looked painted on. Wellington, oblivious, kept talking. Of course, once she found out about the money, she couldn't plan this wedding fast enough. Upgraded the ring, upgraded the venue, upgraded everything. That's my Victoria. She knows her worth. $47 million worth, to be exact. Same as what I'm worth. We're equals. A perfect match. $47 million. The exact amount Willow Creek and its associated assets were worth. The number felt like a sign, like my grandmother laughing from beyond the grave. Victoria stood up, her face red, and kissed Wellington to stop him from talking. The band started playing, people started dancing, and the moment passed. But I saw the cracks in her facade. She'd been exposed, just a little, just enough to hurt. After the wedding, Victoria and Wellington left for their honeymoon in Bora Bora. I went back to Willow Creek and started making plans. The environmental nonprofit I worked for had been trying to buy land for a nature preserve for years, but could never afford it. 50 acres of Willow Creek would be perfect for that. The house itself could be restored and turned into a museum about the Chinese-American experience in the 1960s, about love that transcended prejudice, about the first Emma and her father Robert. But first, I had some truth-telling to do. I invited Victoria to lunch 3 weeks after she got back from her honeymoon. She chose the restaurant, of course, some overpriced place in Midtown where they served deconstructed salads and charged $50 for lettuce. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at the best table, wearing sunglasses indoors, like she was hiding from paparazzi that didn't exist. "This is unexpected," she said as I sat down. "You never want to have lunch, too busy saving trees or whatever it is you do." "I wanted to talk to you about Mom's will," I said. Victoria laughed. "What about it? Want to trade? I'll give you $1,000 for the shoes. That's more than they're worth." "Actually," I said, pulling out the deed, "I wanted to show you what was in the shoes." I watched her face as she read the document. Confusion, then disbelief, then anger, then something that looked almost like fear. "This is fake," she said. "This has to be fake." "It's not." I pulled out the rest. The letters, the photographs, the bank statements. "Grandmother left me Willow Creek. Mom knew about it. She just never told us." But that's impossible. You're nobody. You're nothing. You're the mistake, the accident, the illegitimate daughter." I finished for her. "Yeah, I found those letters too. Mom had an affair. I'm not Dad's biological daughter. That's why she could never love me the way she loved you. I was the proof of her imperfection." Victoria's hands were shaking. "How much?" she whispered. "How much is it worth?" $47 million, I said. "Same as your husband's trust fund. Funny how that worked out." She stood up so fast her chair fell over. "You can't do this. You can't have this. It's mine. Everything is supposed to be mine. I'm the real daughter. I'm the one who mattered." "You're right," I said. "You mattered to Mom, but I mattered to Grandmother, and legally, that's what counts." She threw her water at me. In the middle of that fancy restaurant, Victoria threw her water at me and screamed that I was a thief, a liar, a bastard who was stealing her inheritance. Security had to escort her out. Someone filmed it on their phone. By that evening, it was all over social media. "Hampton's heiress has meltdown over lunch." Wellington called me that night. "Is it true?" he asked. "About the money?" "Yes," I said. "All of it?" "Every penny." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You know she only married me for my money, right?" "And you only married her for her looks and her name," I replied. "Let's not pretend either of you married for love." "Fair enough." He paused. "She's talking about contesting the will." "She can try. She'll lose." "Yeah, my lawyers said the same thing." Another pause. "You know what the really messed up part is? If she'd just been nice to you even a little bit, you probably would have shared it with her." He was right. If Victoria had ever, even once, treated me like a sister instead of competition, I would have split everything with her. But she hadn't. She'd spent 23 years making sure I knew exactly how little she thought of me. And now she got to live with the consequences. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Wellington got to keep his trust fund. Victoria got to keep the house Mom left her, at least until the bank foreclosed on it. She'd been living off credit cards and the assumption of future wealth, and without Wellington's money or the inheritance she thought she'd get from selling Willow Creek, she was broke within a year. She called me once, crying, begging for help. "Please, Emma, we're sisters. We're family. You can't let me lose everything." "I'm not letting you lose anything," I said. "You're losing it all on your own. Just like you said I would, remember? You always said I'd end up with nothing. Turns out you were talking about yourself." "That's cruel," she sobbed. "That's not you. You're not cruel." "No," I agreed. "I'm not. Which is why I'm going to give you the same thing Mom gave me, a box of her old shoes. There's a pair of red heels in there that would look great with your salmon-colored bridesmaid dress. You know, for when you're standing in someone else's wedding, holding someone else's flowers, being someone else's afterthought. I did send her the shoes. She sent them back, cut into pieces, with a note that said, "I hope you die alone like the first Emma." Joke's on her. The first Emma didn't die. I found her. It took a year of searching, but I found her. Emma Chen, formerly Emma Whitmore, 82 years old, living in San Francisco. The car accident that killed her father was real, but her death was faked. My great-grandfather had paid a nurse to declare the baby dead and then sold her to an adoption agency. She was raised by a Chinese-American couple who never told her she was adopted, never told her that her birth mother searched for her until the day she died. I flew to San Francisco with all the letters, all the photographs, everything. Emma, the first Emma, cried when she saw them. "She loved me," she said, touching her mother's handwriting. "She never stopped loving me." "She never stopped looking for you," I told her, "and she made sure that when you were found, you'd have what was yours." The first Emma had lived a good life, married a kind man, had 3 children, became a teacher. But she'd always felt like something was missing, some piece of her history that didn't quite fit. Now she knew why. "You have her face," she told me, touching my cheek. "My mother's face. Our face." The Whitmore women always did breed true, even when they tried not to. I gave her half of everything. It was only fair. She was the Emma the inheritance was really meant for. She tried to refuse, but I insisted. "You're my cousin," I said. My family, the only family I have left that actually matters. She used the money to set up a scholarship fund for mixed-race students studying medicine in honor of her father. I used mine to buy the entire building my studio apartment was in, renovate it, and turn it into affordable housing for environmental activists. Mom would have been appalled. Grandmother would have been proud. Victoria remarried 2 years later, a dentist from New Jersey with a good heart and no idea about her history. She seems happy, or at least content. We don't talk, but I heard from Emma, the first Emma, that she's pregnant. A girl. She's planning to name her Grace. After Mom? I asked Emma when she told me. After the concept, Emma replied. She says she wants her daughter to have the grace she never did. Maybe she's learning, maybe not. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I kept one pair of Mom's shoes, the cream-colored ones with the gold buckles, the ones that held the deed. I wear them once a year, on the anniversary of finding the truth. They're a little tight and definitely out of style, but they remind me of something important. Sometimes the most valuable things come in the most unexpected packages. Sometimes the person everyone thinks is worth the least is actually worth the most. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe has a sense of humor about how it delivers justice. The Whitmore fortune, built on prejudice and lies, maintained through cruelty and neglect, ended up in the hands of two women who were never supposed to exist, the mixed-race daughter who was erased and the illegitimate daughter who was ignored. We took their money and we used it to heal, to help, to make the world a little bit better than the Whitmores ever made it. And Victoria? Well, Victoria got what she always said she wanted, a husband, a house, and a name that mattered. Too bad she didn't realize until too late that the name that really mattered was the one she'd spent her whole life mocking. Mine, Emma. The name of the lost and the found, the forgotten and the remembered, the ones who were supposed to be nothing but turned out to be everything. I still work at the environmental nonprofit, though I don't need to anymore. I still live in Brooklyn, though in a nicer apartment now. I still shop at thrift stores and paint my own furniture, because money doesn't change who you are at your core. It just reveals it. And what was revealed about me? That I'm exactly who I always was, Emma Sinclair, the other daughter, the invisible girl, the one who got the shoes. The only difference is now I know that sometimes getting the shoes means getting everything. The last time I went to Willow Creek, I found something I'd missed before, a letter from my grandmother to the Emma she lost, tucked behind a picture frame. It said, "My dearest Emma, if you ever find this, know that you were loved more than the stars love the sky, more than the ocean loves the shore. You were taken from me, but never from my heart. I've left you everything I could hide, save, and protect. Not because things matter, but because you matter. You always mattered. Even when they tried to erase you, you mattered. Love, your mother who never forgot." I had it framed and hung it in my apartment, next to a photo of me and the first Emma, standing in front of Willow Creek, wearing our grandmother's shoes, looking like the past and present finally meeting after 60 years of searching. Victoria saw it once when she came to ask for money again. She stared at it for a long time, then said, "You both have her face, Mom's mother. You both look just like her." "We do," I agreed. "Is that why Mom couldn't love you?" she asked. "Because you reminded her of all the family secrets?" "Maybe," I said. Or maybe she just didn't know how to love someone who didn't fit her idea of what a Whitmore woman should be. "And what should a Whitmore woman be?" Victoria asked. I thought about it for a moment. Honest, brave, willing to love even when the world says you shouldn't, willing to fight for what's right even when your family says it's wrong, willing to see value in things others overlook. "Like old shoes," Victoria said quietly. "Like old shoes," I agreed. She left without asking for money that time. I haven't seen her since, but Emma tells me she's doing better. Working as a real estate agent, raising her daughter, learning to stand on her own feet. Maybe she'll make it. Maybe she won't. But at least now she's walking in her own shoes, not in Mom's shadow or Wellington's wallet. As for me, I'm living the life my grandmother wanted for her Emma. Free, loved, and valued for who I am, not what I'm worth. I'm dating again. A civil rights lawyer named Marcus who makes me laugh and doesn't care about the Whitmore name or fortune. I'm working on legislation to protect wetlands from development. I'm learning Mandarin to better understand the side of my heritage that was hidden and shamed. And sometimes, late at night, I put on those cream-colored heels and dance around my apartment, thinking about all the women who came before me, the ones who loved boldly, the ones who kept secrets, the ones who were erased, and the ones who survived. I dance for my grandmother, who never gave up hope. I dance for the first Emma who lived a full life, never knowing she was loved. I dance for my mother who was too afraid to tell the truth. And I dance for myself, the girl who got the shoes and found an empire hidden in the heel. The Whitmore fortune is almost gone now, distributed to charities and causes that would have horrified my great-grandfather. The house in Westchester was sold to a family with 4 kids who actually laugh at dinner. The name itself will die with Victoria and me, since neither of us is passing it on to our children. And that's okay. Some legacies deserve to end. But some stories deserve to be told. The story of a woman who loved the wrong man and lost everything except hope. The story of a baby who was sold but survived. The story of a mother who knew the truth but couldn't speak it. And the story of a daughter who found it all hidden in a pair of old shoes. That's my story. The story of Emma. All the Emmas. The lost and the found. The valued and the dismissed. The ones who mattered even when no one thought they did. And if you're watching this because you've ever felt worthless, invisible, or forgotten, I want you to know something. Your worth isn't determined by what others give you or what they think you deserve. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the things others dismiss as worthless. Sometimes the shoes hold more than just feet. They hold futures, fortunes, and the truth that sets you free. Look closer at what you've been given, especially the things that seem worthless. You might be surprised what's hidden in the heel. End. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story moved you, and if you believe that everyone deserves to have their true worth seen, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below. And tell me, what was the moment in the story that resonated with you the most? And if you want more powerful stories about finding your strength and overcoming the odds, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next.